Hi everyone, Harris here with iDownload Blog, and ever since the iPad Pro came out in October of 2018, people have been wondering if this can replace a laptop. And with iPad OS, that will be coming out officially in the fall, but now in beta, the question is more prevalent than ever. I also have my 13-inch MacBook Pro, which I just got, and this is my first 13-inch MacBook that I've used in many years. So I want to see if this iPad Pro can replace this MacBook Pro, or if this $1,200 to $1,300 MacBook Pro is going to be the best bet. Let's compare these two devices and see. Okay, so price point is going to be very important. The iPad Pro starts at $799, and this is for 64 gigabytes. For most people, 64 gigs will be okay. If you keep a lot of things in the cloud with Google Drive, Google Photos, or iCloud Drive, this will be okay. You can't have too many videos on here, too many files, too many apps, but 64 gigs isn't shabby. But I think most people will want the 256 gigs if you're trying to replace a laptop. I certainly have and use the 256 gigabytes, and that is $949. So that adds a lot of money to this. But if you're trying to keep it around for many years, it's probably a worthy investment. Now, the MacBook Pro starts at $1,299 for 128 gigabytes and goes up to $1,499 for 256 gigabytes. Again, 128 is not a whole lot of storage for a computer that you're going to maybe editing video on, storing photos, having a lot of documents. Again, if you use the cloud, especially iCloud Drive, you might be able to get away with this, but a lot of people will probably want the 256 gigabyte version for that extra $200. Now, using flash drives and external SSDs is a lot more usable on the MacBook, so you could get away with 128 gigabytes and using external storage. Now, if you want to upgrade the MacBook Pro to higher specs, it was going to cost you more, and that really starts at $1,599 for the upgraded CPU. Now, of course, there is the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which is going to be much more like the MacBook Pro, but also the cost is going to go way up. But for me, I have the 11-inch, I'm more comfortable with the 11-inch, and I think if you're trying to get both that tablet and laptop experience, the iPad Pro 12.9 is just too big for a really comfortable tablet experience, so that's why I am strictly speaking about the 11-inch iPad Pro. Now, of course, if you want to add in the accessories, if you want to add in the keyboard case, that's going to be $179, and then the Apple Pencil is going to be $129. So all of those included, and the 256 gigabyte version of this iPad, which is this combo I have here, that's going to be $1,257, which is still cheaper than the $1,499 US that the MacBook Pro costs. With education pricing, you can bring that down even further though, and get free Beats. Now, in terms of dimensions, this is going to be important. The iPad Pro is a very compact, bleeding edge device, much better than the MacBook Pro. So it's about 10 inches tall, 9.74 inches, and 7 inches wide, and just razor thin. 0.23 inches thick, or 5.9 millimeters. That's just crazy razor thin. Now, the MacBook Pro isn't thick, it's 0.59 inches, so still pretty portable. And then it is 11.97 by 8.36 inches. But the big thing would be weight. This iPad Pro is a pound for just the tablet itself before the keyboard, whereas the Mac is going to be 3 pounds. When you're taking this around with you and you want something that's super light and portable, it's not really going to add anything to your bag, anything to your commute, and you can fit it into a small pocket, this iPad Pro is definitely going to have that advantage. The keyboard obviously does add some dimension, but it's just a tiny bit of thickness, and that's why this keyboard is both so expensive, but so good because it's just so thin for what it does, and it leaves your iPad still incredibly thin. So what can you do with it? So both these computers have USB-C. Now, the iPad is not USB-C Thunderbolt 3, whereas the MacBook Pro is. So with a MacBook Pro, you can power very high resolution displays and very fast and intensive input and output because it is Thunderbolt 3. And as well as you get 2 ports, so you can have multiple things plugged in, whereas this you can only have one. Now, USB hubs work with both of these, so you can plug in an SD card or a USB drive or even a monitor via HDMI. But the difference is the iPad Pro has very limited monitor support with what it can actually display on that monitor. Outside of a select few applications, it's pretty much just mirroring your display, whereas for $200 you can virtually triple your workspace size with a monitor on the MacBook Pro. So that's going to be a big difference between what it can do with the USB-C. Now, one thing is nice is that you can charge devices via the USB-C cable on both of these devices, so I can charge my watch, my phone, any device really that is lower capacity than this iPad through the USB-C cable. So if you want to charge other things on the go, both of these can do that. Now on the iPad, you can't overwrite data via USB-C. So if you plug in an SSD and you want to maybe edit video off of it, you can't. You can't overwrite. So that's one important difference between the USB-C capabilities as it currently stands. Now, the OS. This is going to be a big difference. So in terms of the MacBook Pro, this thing has a fast SSD, it has high-powered RAM, and it has a good processor. So pretty much anything that you could do on a $4,000 computer, you can do on this one. And for the most part, I think if you keep it within reason, anything that you do on this computer, as long as you aren't trying to do too much without upgrading that RAM, you're going to be able to do pretty smoothly on the MacBook Pro. It is a powerful computer. Now, not all coding and not all graphic design and all that kind of stuff is going to be perfect, but for everything I've done, including editing 4K video, as long as I keep it to, just a couple of the more intensive applications open at a time, this handles it well, which is great. The iPad Pro is going to be everything that the iPad can do with iPad OS, which is a lot more than it used to be able to do. There are great apps now for video editing and photo editing that you can get on the iPad Pro to try to replace your Mac. The App Store is great, and Safari is now better than ever with desktop class browsing, as well as download managing on the iPad, so you can download invoices and upload them from Safari, and the Files app has gotten a lot better, so now you can get access to an SD card or a camera or an SSD that you plug into this computer for reading and writing data, for copying it over to or from, like we mentioned before. And this is a big difference because now you can have access to your iCloud drive and really any online locations you can have on this iPad in the Files app. And if you do have another Mac, maybe an iMac, you can have anything on iCloud Drive, anything on your desktop or wherever, you can have that load on this iPad. So that is very handy. Files has gotten much better on the iPad, and web browsing has also gotten much better with the desktop class. Safari has really made a big difference in what you can actually do with this iPad. Some things like program development you still won't be able to do on this iPad without the proper applications. Now there are different ways you can get around this, but for the most part, you won't natively be able to do a lot of the things that require dedicated apps on a computer, such as maybe Java development. Some differences. So obviously the MacBook Pro has the trackpad support, but the iPad Pro does now have mouse support. A lot of people say it's totally useless. I totally disagree. I love having mouse support, and it is not perfect and is not nearly as good as it is on the MacBook Pro, but you can still customize the macros on your mouse, such as my Logitech Performance mouse. You can still use it for much more fine-tuned adjustments. And of course, you still have that touchscreen. And if you have your Apple Pencil as well, you can use that for both note-taking as well as for more fine-tuned adjustments, which is great. The iPad also has the benefit of a rear camera, and a very good rear camera. So whether it's making FaceTime more enjoyable or scanning documents, which is very easy and very convenient to do on the iPad for note-taking or scanning and sending, or anything else that you might want to be doing, including an occasional picture or video, the iPad has that advantage. The App Store is more versatile. So while it doesn't have all of the applications, you can't download third-party applications from the web still, but it has the App Store, which has a lot more really good apps than the Mac has. So for instance, if for some reason you just wanted to install Snapchat, you can do that on the iPad. That's not something that you can really do on the Mac without going through a third-party route. And on the iPad, you have cellular, which is great for people on the go. The Mac is still lacking in that. So at the end of the day, I am convinced that this iPad is getting very, very close to being able to replace a laptop. Most things on the web you can now do on the iPad. There are certainly still limitations and optimizations still need to happen, but that is improving. Files is not perfect and it's not totally comparable to Finder on the Mac, but again, it is getting there. Apple still needs to work a little bit for what you can do with drives that you plug in, but it's getting better. The App Store is amazing, and the performance and power and USB-C on this iPad Pro is excellent. So at the end of the day, if you have a keyboard case and this touchscreen, the iPad Pro is a great contender to the MacBook Pro and a little bit cheaper. It's not going to be perfect for everyone in every situation, but basically the point of this video is to say that I do believe that it is a comparable experience. Anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. You can leave those down below, and we'll see you in the next video.